We're here in Glasgow to cover COP26. We are COPTV.
Hi, I'm Finlay and you're watching COPTV.
Hi, my name is Charlie Bowen, and these are my motorcycles, my electric one, and you're watching COPTV.
Hello, we are COPTV. I'm Finlay.
I'm Meredith.
And I'm Zoe.
This is our fourth broadcast from the New York Times Climate Hub.
Tonight we're talking about climate activism from around the world and the negative emotions that come with it. We also take a look at some creative responses in hopes to inspire.
But first, earlier today, Joseph caught up with Manuel Puyar Vidal, who is heavily involved in COP26 Blue Zone negotiations, and he was the former president of COP20 in Peru.
Can you please introduce yourself and tell us about your background?
Yeah, sure. I am Manuel Pulgar Vidal. I am currently the Climate and Energy Global Practice Leader with WWF International. Before of that, I used to be the Minister of the Environment of Peru. And as for that, the President of COP20. We had the COP20 in Lima in 2014. I am an environmental lawyer by training. And yeah, I've been involved in these environmental topics for now, by 37 years.
As a past president of COP and someone who has been to many COPs, can you tell us what it's like being involved in the negotiations?
It's a very complex thing, but probably there is a big difference in between what I did in COP20 and what negotiators are doing in the current COP. Because remember that in 2014, we were negotiating to agree and to got a text. And finally we got it. That is the Paris Agreement, that we got it in 2015, so a year after Lima COP20. Now we are talking about implementation. That is a different animal, no? Because probably before of 2015, we knew well that our big achievable must be an agreement, complex and difficult. We did it well, but now the details of the implementation are the more difficult. Considering that after the Paris Agreement and to implement it, now we have to ground it, many of the actions, because used to be more global, now it is more domestic. The implementation depends on countries. And the discussion around countries, it is who should take more obligations, who should take more responsibilities, who should put the money on the table. So it is complex, but I am a believer that we could close the current COP with a good and successful outcome.
Many of our leaders have been pointing to the young people to solve this problem. Do you think this is fair?
I think that this is a responsibility of our generation. This is a responsibility of who created the mess. But for sure, we do need to engage the youth because they are going to take decisions soon. And also because I think that the youth movement has a strong responsibility. Probably the primary one it is to have them being activists. I believe a lot on the activism. I believe on people on the streets claiming, because the youth, it is the sector that can really mobilize decision makers to take a strong decision. So that is the first role. The second one, it is that the youth can really transmit better the message. We are in a time of the social media. Youth, it is fully able, the millennials, to say it in an alternative way, are used to being very effective in using social media. And we know the potential of social media to transmit a message. So in that way, I think that youth can play a role by transmitting the message to everybody. That is a key element. And the third element, it is that the youth, it is fully more aware that we used to be in the past. So that level of aware, also because of the pandemics, it is the good foundation to promote better actions and better decisions for the future. So we shouldn't point it for sure youth about their responsibility, but we should engage and involve youth into this collective endeavor to achieve good objectives towards sustainability, a net zero economy, a net zero and resilient economy, and also as a way to reverse nature loss.
From one perspective of the Blue Zone to another, we're here with Rebecca and Maya from the YMCA. Hi guys, how are you?
Hi. Thank you.
Brilliant. So first off, we just wanted to know a bit about your experience in the Blue Zone, especially coming from two young women in the Blue Zone as well.
Well, it's been hectic, tiring, but also very informative and inspiring. I've had to meet with a lot of people that have impacted my life so much, especially with the kind of thing that I'm doing back home concerning climate change. Yes.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. It's been really good. I've really enjoyed meeting other young people and activists from different countries and different kind of walks of life, kind of getting a greater insight into what they're doing to tackle climate change in their own countries and how they're collaborating. I have found it really challenging to navigate the whole thing. I think there's a lot of accessibility issues in COP this year, and what makes me a little sad is that, you know, a lot of the voices that should be there, they're just not really being heard or listened to. But I think what we're lucky is some of those activists are there, so getting to meet people and talk to people and be able to amplify that, I've liked that. I've liked getting to know them, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, you both are fantastic and your work is brilliant, and I think we've got a clip of Rebecca's work as well, which we'll show just now.
Let's hold our hands together in fighting against the climate change, because this is our world. If we don't do anything, then we are going to destroy it.
Thank you for everyone who has worked with us on this project. Let's work together in the future. Let's continue doing what we're doing. The message is being spread across. Work is being seen.
So it's become very clear to me that you're both very into your whole kind of community efforts as well. So especially with Rebecca working on the project called Stop the Spread in 2009 until 2011, which kind of focused on teaching less privileged women how to repurpose plastic waste into bags and baskets to sell on. And Maya, you came from Miserhead in the west of Cork, a rural area with a reliance on farming and fishing. So clearly there must have been a very tight community feeling there as well. How does that kind of affect how you are and how you kind of present yourselves at COP?
I feel like from that background, it's easy for me to represent the people that I have lived with and had all my life been in contact with. So even as I am at the COP, I know what I'm talking about, and I'm trying to bring my community to the people that cannot come to my community and represent them and actually just tell them that the situation is getting more and more serious and that action should be taken in order for my people to be heard, in order for my people to have a better future as regards to what's happening. Yeah.
I think Rebecca said it really nicely there. You have such a lovely way with words. Like community, like where I'm from it's very tight knit, it's small, and I suppose a lot of the time it feels like that community is under attack, especially with a very large agricultural. Like I'm not from a farm background myself, but it kind of, there's a tension there. So, you know, a lot of the time people feel that, you know, that they're being blamed for a lot of the issues. But then taking that, I suppose, the perspective of a tight-knit community towards the COP arena, I suppose there's a certain connection I feel with anybody who kind of cares about the climate or cares about our environment, and getting to move from one community to another and try and broaden that and bring people along with us as we're trying to tackle climate change, because that's the main thing, is that with a lot of these discussions around it, people are left behind. Like the communities that are most affected, they aren't necessarily brought along with us. So I suppose coming from a country like Ireland, which is fairly progressive, although some would argue not, but it's doing okay in terms of climate. I then want to make sure that we're supporting and broadening that community even more globally, and like getting to meet people and network and collaborate. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to tell everybody how class Rebecca is and what she's doing, and like the other delegates. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, as you both have put fabulously, climate change has a lot to do with communities, and it impacts them quite heavily. It can also kind of lead to climate displacement. So Maya, you yourself have ensured support for refugees and asylum seekers, and interned for 5.5 months with the Human Rights Centre in Uganda. I'm sure that both of you have seen firsthand the damage displacement can have on communities, and in some cases it can produce a lack of human rights also. When you're in the blue zone, do you go in with the mindset of climate action equals human rights, and how does your own experience change your views when you're in there?
Yes, I go in with the view of climate change versus human rights because, I mean, we're part of the climate, and so are a lot of other animals. And when we're talking about climate change, I think we should also know that we're talking about the circle of life, how it operates, like the ecosystem. So if human rights are not included, then, well, there's a part of the puzzle missing from this whole thing. So even as you enter COP26, you're looking to hear or to have an understanding that people are looking into the plight of human beings living in this world as regards to climate change. You want to hear more relationship between their rights and their rights to their environment, their rights to their places of settlement, their rights to a lot of other social amenities that they're entitled to.
Yeah, I think like the concept of climate justice and looking at climate change through a human rights lens is really important. Mm-hmm. I think it's really important that that is present in the negotiations. Mm-hmm. There's some really class advocates like Mary Robinson who are really pushing for that in the international kind of discussions, but it's not enough, and it really does need to be more prominent, I think. Yeah.
Brilliant. So it's been great hearing from both of you. We'll just take a short break at the moment and we'll have a look at the daily roundup from Stella.
Since the draft COP26 agreement, it has been revealed that the Australian government has been lobbying UNESCO to remove their recommendations that countries keep warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. This is shocking news coming from a country that has been experiencing extreme weather events like wildfires and has also been experiencing extreme coral bleachings as a result of the climate crisis.
Murals have been popping up across the world to signify important themes of COP26. The one we are visiting today was created by Fearless Collective and was designed to amplify the importance of Indigenous voices.
Gavin Newsom has announced why he did not attend the COP26 conference and has been staying away from the public view. He has decided that taking his children trick-or-treating was more important than attending COP26. AOC has tried Scotland's favourite drink, Iron Brew, after Nicola Sturgeon gave her a can of it. There have been mixed reviews of the drink from delegates all over the world. The Congresswoman is one of the many politicians who enjoys the drink. In an Instagram video, she said, "Oh my God, love it, love it."
Today it was announced that the US and China are going to work together to tackle the climate crisis and try and reach the 1.5 degree target. But as the two largest polluters in the world, what does this actually mean, and is it too little, too late?
Thank you, Stella, for the daily roundup. So back to Rebecca and Maya. Do you feel like the California governor skipping out on COP shows the lack of commitment from those higher up in power?
I think not only that, I think Yeah, kind of. I think what's even worse is the people who are coming by like private jets and like this extremely unfriendly climate kind of transport. And I think I'd really like to see a bit more, I suppose, leading by example, because some people, like arguably COP has been interesting in terms of success. I don't really want to associate that word with COP, but yeah, I think it's a little disappointing when people skip it. Sometimes people might have personal reasons, but I think it's important, even if you aren't there, to be making a really strong statement back home, maybe going to the marches or like supporting the climate action movements. But yeah, I think the examples set by some of the leaders have been interesting.
Well, it's very clear where his interests lie. And I'll give you an example. I'm a mother, and today's my son's birthday and I'm not home. I would have so loved to be with him on his birthday. It's also as important, but I'm here. So it just shows where his interests lie. And as young people, we see what kind of example he's setting. Our eyes are open on that word. Operation binoculars on them. Just watching to see what they're doing, yeah.
Well, as you've just said, you are a mother, and so you must have some views for the future for your child or children. And so, could you just to wrap up a bit, what would your final message be to our viewers?
Well, I always say this: that the earth has no mouth of its own, but the people that live in it are its mouthpiece. And if we won't speak up for it, we won't have it anymore. So I hope that reaches out to somebody and makes them take action and do something, even the most tiny thing, to try and help mitigate any effort to mitigate climate change. The earth will appreciate.
That's beautiful. Yeah, can we just leave it at
Yes,
that?
that's brilliant.
That's so lovely. You're so poetic.
Well, thank you both for being here. It's been a pleasure speaking to both of you, both such inspirational women, and it's brilliant that you're getting the opportunity to go to the Blue Zone this year. So thank you very much for coming, as I said.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Yeah.
The crisis that we are is being caused by us, the humans.
It makes you wonder what kind of a world we'll leave for the next generation.
I'd like to think of us as global citizens rather than local citizens. But if you want to have great leaders of tomorrow, the leaders of now have to be great, they have to do action, they have to inspire.
Sumakmuru es más que un proyecto, es una idea potente que cree en la transformación de recursos inorgánicos que todos desechan en una nueva oportunidad de construir algo que pueda mejorar la realidad de otras personas.
From this trash, we turn it into treasure.
I feel happy that this program has been started at our school in my time, and I'm going to be part of that team to make it to reach its fruition.
We will no longer wait to grow up, to have the fancy titles, to have the years of experience.
Maybe we cannot prevent deforestation 100%, but each of us can plant some trees and make this process less impactful, in this case deforestation.
If people will not act together towards our goal to have a sustainable environment, everything we have and the future of our children will perish.
If people know that we are in a crisis, then they'll be able to act differently.
Climate change is not going to wait for us, and neither should we.
Yesterday, I had the absolute pleasure of spending time with little Amal and Storm, giant puppets, both with amazing stories to tell. They both bring light to different climate issues, and I got to be there when they met for the first time in Govan. The streets were filled with fun music and the atmosphere was absolutely amazing. Hello, I'm Finlay, you're watching COPTV, and today we are in Govan. We are going to be meeting little Amal and Storm, who is right behind me. So what are little Amal and Storm doing at COP26?
Little Amal has come from Syria. She's a refugee. Storm, she is a spirit of the sea, and she's very angry, obviously, at what we've been doing to the world. Probably sad rather than angry.
Can you tell us a little bit more about Little Amal's story and what her message is?
She has come as a refugee from Syria, and she's been all over Europe. She's basically telling us about colonialism. She's telling us about the dangers for the global south in terms of climate change, and she represents that voice of the ethnic peoples, of the indigenous peoples of the global south, because there's a huge divide in terms of social justice around climate change. And she represents that voice. The two puppets are walking. Storm's going to walk along Govan Road. She's going to meet some of the children from Riverside Primary School. She's going to meet the choir. She's going to meet an opera singer. She's going to end up at Govan Graving Docks, where there's a massive sculpture by Still Moving that spells out the words "No New Worlds," warning us that there are no new worlds. There's nowhere else to explore. This is the only world we have, and we need to look after it. All the people of Govan will be out, so that's the best way to be involved. I think activism is very, very powerful, and the activist voice needs to be heard. And when that is done in a creative way, which is quirky, it's humorous, it works in a sort of subliminal way, and messages, very powerful, multi-layered messages can be conveyed in a creative way through arts and puppetry and song and dance in a way that combative activism doesn't achieve.
Very important that local schools and obviously the parents and families get involved, because a lot of COP's been for academics, professionals, visitors.
I think it's really important. I mean, it's a combination of things. It's an opportunity to use music and creativity to kind of highlight the importance of kind of addressing climate change, and it puts a whole lot of fun into it as well, and it showcases the great artistic talent that's in the city.
How important is that optimism in the overall fight against climate change?
I mean, it's completely essential. I struggle to have a lot of optimism with the scale of the struggle which we need to go through to ensure that we avoid what's basically a catastrophe, especially for people in the global south who are least responsible for making it happen. So I'm really glad that there are people here who can drive that optimism and spread it around in such a great way.
So you were there filming that with me yesterday. How did you find the atmosphere?
Yeah, I thought it was a great atmosphere. Like the creativity and the whole community power coming together, and the band and everything, it was brilliant. I just thought it was great fun. I loved the music. It was very well structured. It was very happy. And the brass band, great costumes.
Yeah. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah,
it was really good.
Interesting people. Yeah, it was an all-round great event, which showed the power of Govan community and the importance of expressing creativity. But moving on to another powerful form of storytelling. Earlier in this year, I spoke to a production company called Silverback. They're a world-class team of wildlife filmmakers who create various well-known documentaries, such as Earthshot Prize and Breaking Boundaries. I had the chance to ask them some of their most recent shows that are about issues facing the climate crisis. So here's an interview with them, starting with how they make a good film with a great impact.
Still, we're not moving in the right direction. I don't get depressed. I get angry.
So what are you trying to achieve with your film? Is it just to tell people it's happening? Well, we need to go further now and talk about how that might then lead to changes in behaviour, changes in how we vote, or changes in how we actually try to live our lives to make a difference to that. So it's sort of identifying what you want, what effect you want your film to have, that will help you decide and make that film have an effect.
The biggest problem is that we're not just preaching to the converted. You know, people who like the environment, you know, will watch all this stuff. But of course, we have to reach people that don't have any interest in the environment or don't really see there being an issue or seeing their part. They don't really have a part to play or feel they don't have a part to play. And that's our biggest issue as filmmakers, is how do we reach all these people?
So when you're creating films like this, and if you're creating one on the climate crisis, say, would you say it's a better approach to inspire people through hopeful thinking or through telling them the harsh reality and the facts and everything? What's your approach?
Your balance between telling it like it is, but also finding some hope and something that people can do, because generally you want your audience to feel something when they watch what you've produced, but also you want them to do something with what they've learned. And I think if people don't have any hope, then they're less likely to act because, you know, what's the point? I can't do anything to change it anyway.
I think that's really important, is constantly kind of searching for that new angle, which is both entertaining but allows you to tell that story.
What we think is really important is like the collaboration between what you're doing with scientists and like the creative industries. And so how important do you think it is to keep like collaborating and working closely with scientists, and how do you find working with them?
I think it's hugely important. I mean, yeah, it's one of the most important things really. One, you know, we want to make programs that are factually correct and, you know, 100% backed up by scientists and science. So, you know, we don't want to be in that situation. It may have happened to all of us where we're in the papers for getting something wrong. You know, no one wants that. So, you know, we got to get things right. So that's the first and foremost thing. And I think, you know, scientists are getting much better. They are, you know, every scientist now has to justify their research by the kind of media outreach or, you know, the ways people are going to talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's right. And scientists, I think, definitely have changed a lot in how they want to be able to communicate as well, because I think a lot of them, particularly climate scientists, are intensely frustrated that they've been, you know, warning of what's here now for a very long time.
The heating of our world is playing havoc with the Earth's weather patterns.
That relationship between scientists and those who want to communicate that science is, yeah, hugely important. And you should find that therefore they will be very receptive to spending the time required to help you to understand what they're trying to communicate, because if you don't, you can't make a program about it. So yeah, it comes back to that same question, the same thing that Hugh said. Don't be scared to say, I don't actually understand what you mean there. Could you please try and put it in a different way? Because if you can't get it as the filmmaker, obviously the audience certainly will not.
I do agree with both Claire and Chris. I think there's a lot more mutual respect and understanding now between science and filmmakers than there may be at the start of my career. But, you know, you've got to remember that a lot of scientists are actually in science, perhaps because of the films, the kind of films that we've made that's inspired them. And I've been very, very fortunate to have worked with David Attenborough in the years when he was actually traveling around the world. So I worked on Life of Mammals. We'd go all over the world with him. And I can't tell you the number of scientists that we were working with that would say to David, you know, I'm in this job because I watched your programs and I was inspired by them. And it just makes you feel very good. You must realize that actually some of what we do actually really does make a difference to people's lives. And it's, you know, it's fantastic when you get feedback like that. But of course, you know, it works the other way around as well. And you know, I'm sure Claire's worked with this amazing guy, Rockstrom, you know, and, you know, people like him inspire filmmakers. So, you know, it's as I said, I think there's a lot of mutual respect and understanding now.
That was so interesting, Jasmine. I love learning about the link between activism and filmmaking. So what is it that you love so much about Silverback's approach to nature documentaries?
Yeah, I think upon like speaking to Silverback, you realise how much passion and how much they care about the subject, and each episode they're putting in so much effort, and they clearly work well with the scientists, and to get that collaboration, it's really great to see.
I'm glad you found that out for us and had such a great experience interviewing them. Coming up tonight, we have Zoe's interview with Chris Packham about Rewilding, talking all things nature and wildlife. We see Dr. Catherine Hayhoe, amongst many others, discuss how to cope with climate anxiety and how we can use these emotions to amplify our voices. And we can't forget about Cooking with Rachel. Next up, we have a video from a Malaysian school. The video follows a boy visiting the future and sees the direct consequences of climate change on our planet. Let's see their creative response to the climate crisis.
Aman. Listen to me. Pollution is the introduction of harmful materials into the environment. These harmful materials are called pollutants. Pollutants can be natural, such as volcanic ash. They can also be created by human activities such as trash or runoff produced from factories. Pollutants can damage the quality of air, water, and land. So, let me show you the instruction that humans need to. Causes of ocean pollution. Dumping sewage in the ocean has always been considered the cheapest and easiest way of disposing waste. The billions of tons of litter end up in the ocean. Each year reportedly bring 250 million tons of trash into the sea every year.
Anak muda zaman sekarang ni kerja asyik main game. Pagi sampai petang asyik main game. Bukan nak tolong aku sapu sampah ni. Ish. Jinsin. Dek okey dek. Lanjut, dia nak duduk. Dia nak suruh kau buat. Aish, mancing tak nyala pula. Apa angin ni? Hei, jangan bakar.
As you can see, burning polluted materials such as garbage, plastic, and pointed or tinted wood is harmful to the environment because these materials release toxic chemicals that pollute our air. Residue from burning contaminants the soil and groundwater and can enter the human food chain through crops and livestock.
Sini. Ya, Chef.
Ambil mana ni? Kita nak mana sih?
Baik. Gimana ni? Okay, sekarang ni kita dekat tempat kejadian tau. Okay, kita dapat terima laporan ada orang buat pencemaran tanah kat sini. Okay, sekarang ni kita jumpa orang setia. Jom kita pergi kat orang setia tu. Ada buat apa?
How do chemicals affect the environment? Chemicals can enter the air, water and soil when they are produced, used or disposed. Their impact on the environment is determined by the amount of chemical that is released, the type and the concentration of the chemical, and where it is found.
I'm a man. Hello. Can you hear me? Anyone out there? Hello? I've trudged the earth for so damn long and still don't know. I hope it's not a simulation. Give each other names like Ahmed and Pedro. And yeah, we like to wear clothes. Girls still look beautiful and it covers up our human. Eat a lot of tuna fish, but these days it's like we don't know how to act. All these shootings, pollution, we under attack on ourselves. Like let's all just chill, respect what we built. Like look at the internet, it's cracking as hell. What we got is land for, what we gotta stand for. Love. And we love the
What a brilliant film. Yesterday, I had the absolute privilege of speaking to Chris Packham on the subject of rewilding. It was fantastic seeing someone that I had only ever seen on TV in real life, and he's just as inspiring in real life as he is on your TV screens back at home. Let's take a look.
I don't mind us using individual species as flagships to attract attention. We know that they have the capacity to do that. I mean, I can sell you a sea eagle a lot more easily than I can sell you a woodlouse, and I'm conscious of that. And ultimately, therefore, using them as symbolic or emblematic, totems, if you like, to initiate conservation work is fine. But we've got to realise that, we need at this point to be looking after whole ecosystems, not just single species. When it comes to putting things like sea eagles back into an environment, they are the cherry on the cake. They're the keystone predator in avian terms at the top of that ecosystem. If the cake isn't properly baked, i.e. the rest of the ecosystem hasn't been reconstructed so it can support them, then maybe that's not the right choice at the right time, which is why, again, I am very interested in reintroduction of lynx because of the impact they would have over a broader ecosystem than I am perhaps interested in the reintroduction of wolves at this point, where it would be so difficult to do, it would be so heavily managed that I don't think that they would be playing a role as ecosystem engineers, doing their proper job in that landscape. For me, if there's going to be any talk of single species conservation, then it's the beaver, because it isn't single species conservation. You put the beaver back, it radically changes the landscape and leads to a massive increase in biodiversity of fish, invertebrates, amphibians, reptiles, birds. It is a proper ecosystem engineer. So I'll back the beaver, knowing full well that in the back of my mind it's not just about beavers, it's about whole ecosystems. The tardiness and the staggering process that we're going through to reintroduce the beaver in the UK is frankly embarrassing beyond all compare. Most countries in Western Europe have successfully done this and it's paid dividends for them. The problem that we've had in the UK is a tiny majority of recalcitrant landowners who bathed in ignorance and as a consequence thwarted our progress, which is really disappointing. It would be easy to point the finger at them and say it's all their fault because they have been ignorant. They've been saying that beavers eat fish and that they're bad for the environment and they do this, that and the other. But ultimately we also have to look at ourselves because we obviously failed to win their hearts and minds. And if we're going to take people through a transition, in this case in terms of the fauna that lives in our country, by reinstating an extinct species, the beaver, then we need to take everyone on that journey, and we have to be relatively tolerant and patient of the fact that they won't all start the journey or make the same progress at the same rate. And I think that one of the problems with beavers is that it's become very polarised, and there are those who are for and those who are against. And what we always need is a bit more middle ground, where people can develop an understanding, work creatively together and come to a method of progress which is more acceptable. Education takes time, obviously. Sometimes it takes generational periods to turn over for people to change their minds. We don't have generational periods of time any longer. We need to make dramatic, bold and definitive differences in our landscape, and we need to do it now. So let's stop talking about reintroducing the beavers. Simply glance over our shoulder to Europe, where it's been enormously beneficial, and just get on with it. I'm interested in the work that is being done at Allerdale. Rewilding, of course, has become very much part of our portfolio of conservation measures that we would like to see more broadly and rapidly implemented to make a more positive and immediate difference. For a long time we've been using a model of nature reserves, which are largely disconnected units of land which we have tried to manage to suit either one or two habitats or, on occasion, one or two species. Rewilding is looking at a more landscape, holistic approach to ecological restoration, repair or reinstatement. So it's something that we have to explore, and we know through the way that it's been done in other parts of the world, indeed as close as Europe, that it pays dividends for both wildlife and for people too. And I know that at Allerdale, the project's largely been privately sponsored, which is great, because the conservation NGOs, even the statutory bodies associated with our various governments, are not terribly wealthy at this point in time. So if a private individual or collection of them wants to come together and initiate a project like that, that's brilliant. I mean, I think very much at this stage, all of these projects are sort of, what should we say, pilot projects. And we're learning as we're developing them. But that works in Europe, so it should work here in Scotland and across the UK too. I like the wildlife most that I engage with most frequently because it's part of my community, and I like the idea of being part of a community which is as healthy as it can be at that point in time. So I'm really keen on looking after the wildlife in my garden, and I can make a difference there. I don't need permission. I don't need to ask anyone if I can release beavers in my garden. Unfortunately, my garden's too small to release beavers. I've got to be pragmatic about it. But within reason, I can do what I want there. And that empowers me to make a positive difference. And I think that empowerment is far greater than, planting the wildflowers, feeding the birds, putting up the bat boxes that I do in my garden. What that says to me is that, I can be part of a solution. And when I communicate with others who have also recognised they can be part of a solution, then we get a real synergy, 1 + 1 = 3, and it grows. And that's the sort of things I think that will, and is already, bringing us together when it comes to exercising our democratic right to ask our leaders to make the right decisions and do the right things.
Chris Packham is a huge public figure who, along with many others, has been involved in the New York Times Climate Hub. Dr. Catherine Hayhoe was also here speaking about the public's emotions towards the climate crisis. She's a scientist and professor of political science at Texas Tech University. Let's hear what she has to say.
And did you know that 70% of people in the US are already worried about climate change? 83% of mothers are worried about climate change. 84% of young people in 10 major countries around the world are worried about climate change. Most of us are worried, but we feel hopeless and helpless. We don't understand why it matters, and we don't understand what to do about it. So where do we start these positive, constructive conversations with anyone but the 7%ers? Begin from the heart rather than the head. Begin with something that you care about, a person, a place, a thing, an activity that is near and dear to your heart, and connect the dots to why it might matter to them too. So I don't hunt, and I don't really fish either, so I'm not a great person to talk to people who fish and hunt, but there are people who do that, and they're great people to connect the dots with people who share their passions.
Climate anxiety is a relatively new term for an issue that's been around for a long time. Climate anxiety affects a lot of people, specifically young people. Here's a few experts that will help explain what it is, who it affects, and how we can tackle it.
Cool. So my name is Hannah, and my pronouns are she, her, and I am the Student Engagement Promoter at GESS, which is the Glasgow University Environmental Sustainability Team.
I'm John Thorne, I'm Sustainability Coordinator at the Glasgow School of Art.
My name is Rory Brogan, and I am part of the UKYCC, the Youth Climate Coalition.
So climate anxiety is, I guess, anxiety that is caused by issues relating to the climate crisis.
It is a real problem. It's a problem for the future of ourselves, but also the current issues that we're feeling guilty about and experiencing for those all around the world.
And I think that it particularly affects young people when we're thinking about our futures and what the world that we're growing up in is going to look like. And yeah, I think from conversations that I've had with friends and people that I work with, like, it is an issue that is becoming like increasingly like prevalent and a big cause of anxiety and kind of this existential dread that we feel when we think about the planet and what we can do to kind of help it. We feel so sort of like often powerless and helpless, and so I think that is a big source of anxiety.
So absolutely, I experience it, and others do too, and I think it's a growing problem. And thankfully, I have been very lucky to have that culture of care around me to help us tackle that problem.
So you've got pupils 6, 7, 8 really frightened about climate change and not knowing what to do with it. So I think age-specific work with students, actually working on their anxiety, because you've got children so young actually worried about this, which is a crime, and it really.
What would your advice be to anyone dealing with climate anxiety?
I think, first of all, look out for groups like Climate Psychology Alliance Scotland, which I've been involved in.
I think for me, like a big help is just finding small ways to make a change. Just getting involved with groups, climate groups, or societies, maybe at school or at university or your place of work. And yeah, finding some way to make a difference can just really help you to feel empowered. And I also think talking to people about these issues and realising that
I think getting involved in nature. It's started me off in falling in love with the planet and the environment, and I know that it can really help people connect with nature and what's really important.
So sometimes it's sadness or happiness or anger or connecting to a particular issue, and art has that power to connect us. So it's vital for creative people to make films, sculptures, paintings, any medium they can think of to actually make us feel and connect us to climate change.
And so getting out into nature and experiencing all of the wonderful things around you and giving you a bit of grounding and saying, well, this is what we need to save, but also we need to appreciate what we've got right now.
Now, I think it is so amazing that we're bringing light to a subject that usually isn't spoken about, especially when it affects so many people. I know personally, when I read news that's very pessimistic, it doesn't necessarily have any positive elements to it, I definitely do start to feel very sad and disheartened about the future.
Yeah, I know, I agree completely. I think when you're looking at the big picture, it's very daunting. Looking at the headlines and things, what's going on with the climate crisis. I think getting involved any way you can, for me, is getting involved creatively, like John said. Any way you feel you can kind of take time to relax and getting involved, yeah.
Brilliant. It's fantastic that you have brought this issue to light. As we've already kind of said, it's not talked about a lot, but well, it's now time for everyone's favourite part of the show. It's Cooking with Rachel.
The audio isn't working, but it is day 3 of Cooking with Rachel and Casey. Today we're going to be making peanut butter bars. You're going to need grabbing a bowl, you're going to add your peanut butter, coconut oil, 45 grams of maple syrup, a tablespoon of vanilla extract, and half a tablespoon of salt. Mix that all together, and then you're going to add your flavour in. Make sure to give it a good mix. Once mixed, you can add your chocolate chips. Once your chocolate chips have been evenly dispersed, you're going to add it into your container. Make sure to pat it all down. This is how it should look. Then you're going to put that into a freezer for 30 minutes. In the meantime, you're going to make your second layer. For this, you'll add your 100 grams of walnuts into a food processor and blend. Add this into a bowl with 1 tablespoon of cocoa powder, 2 tablespoons of water, and a pinch of salt. Mix that together, then place it on top of your first layer. Once you've smoothed it out, you're going to put it back into the freezer for another 30 minutes. And that's some quick and easy peanut butter bars. Hope you enjoy!
Wow, that looked like a lot of salt, Rachel.
Yeah, I'm not too keen on salty food, so I'll stay away from that. But youth activism has been very important at COP26 and has been a driving force for change throughout the world. I got the chance to speak to Kate Forbes in Gaelic about youth activism around the globe, but also here in Scotland. Hello, is me sé fionnach, is sinne COPTV agus an dú ha sin ann in inner naran. Ha duine ága ag toiseach an sapit in ag airigh na crinne, agus haidir bhí ag immerst gun stat feich an tail. Ach, urennen hai farachgin gun éim nu nach al dúchanen het dors gnieven immechi syna bhí déalaigh le airigh na gná híte. Ach, ha sin an dochas gun airigh sin ag COP26. Ha airigh na crinne na bulle bhrín mór a mesk luch politics san lá an dú. Leis gevel in cúsper gema éigeneoch ha ai amanen a farachgin nachheilid a géisioch rein. Cúteoch nachheilid a géanú goleor syna bhí déalaigh le airigh na crinne. Her mi corm a bhí brín ri rúnere innevis agus an economy san Parliament na Halbe, Kate Erivish, mu dhéon duine ága agus airigh na gná híte. Leis go bhfuil gún hoicrí chomhátear feich an tail agus cúteoch an Alba, a bhfuil is mundín go bhfuil lucht politics a géisteach.
Tá sin a géisteach, ach ham vis acamsa mar cútecin a ha a ruch go chuch in scíre acam. Go bhfuil défar biachcin ag duine, agus ha défar corman ag duine. Agus ha firiste a bhí a géibach, ha tór na stere a bhí a curir dói na planigin agus na policyin a ha agus a cúteach duine a bhí a lenting na policyin agus na planigin mar sin.
Ha rialtas na Halpa tórútan a joutain san an amrí teach a thuh airigh na crinne, agus réir iadsan haid an slia cearst san na targagin a réin. Ach, cemar a nísin cínteach go bhfuil seo a tacharst. Dé na planigin a heag an rialtas a thuh an amrí teach agus airigh na crinne.
Wel, san rein acamsa a thuh meunichach, ha tór planigin acing an draste, mar isimpler ha 10 billion nocht je meunichach a dolisteach go bunstructor a ha a déalaigh le airigh na gná híte, mar isimpler ha sin a cíalchach gin bí meunichach ann Jeffer Shorshikin je cádal úr in dói a ha sin cúd cuach gan a taianaking agus ha 10 billion nocht ann in draste héin son bunstructor úr.
San amguniste agus mi chéintseach seo ha airigh na crinne coit mar rút a ha gema traum agus a bhfuil teachtarach acad de goicrí na Halpa agus oigrí in tail.
Ha sífse há cutramach sgas go bhfuil corm actise rutigin déflichte a dheanú. Va han dúlite san acing in draste sgas nach de rein sin barach nuair a bheith sinne áce ha corman acifse rutigin déflichte a dheanú, agus ha sin a géisteach raibh, ha sin a tuigsing in cúsperin a hasisih a tócail, agus ha mín dochas gin gian sinne rutigin na sear na rein in ginialach runne seo.
Ha im dhéin a bhí a gopar cála. Channerig san sia arás in dochas gin cur luch politics rutin go cearst. Féimi sin airighin I dhéanú sa bheithe lail, ach in toiseach, stácha gin cór sin éisteach rí daine áca.
What an interesting film from Finlay. Well, it seems like we've known each other for years, but really it's only been months. But back when we first started, our first task was to put together a broadcast for the Redford Centre over in America. We were delighted to see that we weren't the only ones hard at work. Their young people were also hard at work, creating short films about climate change for us.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Right now, I am in my backyard, which is basically the woods. I'm gonna be looking for stuff. All right, so I just found this beer. Another glass one. I found one little plastic one, two, third one, three, another one, four, another one. My collection. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. You should know what you're doing to the earth. I mean, this probably won't even be out to everyone in the world, but I hope others will understand to just not do this. Thank you for watching. See you.
Maybe environmental justice is a ripple. Turn on your car and line the pockets of oil companies, raise the temperature of the earth, and cause a rise in the sea level that displaces entire communities. Click that buy button to purchase a product made by sweatshop workers, shipped on a plane that adds to our carbon footprint, stuffed in a box made from trees that could have been cleaning our air, and filled with bubble wrap that will last longer on this planet than you or I will. Bite into that burger and don't think about the mistreatment of the animals, or the dangers posed to the workers, or the 3.1 gigatons of greenhouse gases produced each year by the meat industry. Everything we do causes a ripple so far-reaching, it can make you feel like it's all just hopeless anyway. But back up a sec. Maybe that ripple isn't about guilt. Maybe it's about power. Because if everything we do impacts our world, then the power isn't with someone else, it's with us. And when we make responsible choices and raise up our voices whenever someone does something that we'd never allow to happen in our backyard, because all people are our neighbors and all the world is our backyard, that is when we will see and hear and feel the ripple that is environmental justice.
Yo, that video was sick.
And important. Thanks so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be here tomorrow for the final day of COP, so be sure to tune in. Have a great night.
Bye.
How you doing? I'm Ray Winstone, and you're watching COPTV. It's not the old bill or a police channel or anything like that. No. Is it?